Welcome to another episode of News Boss by Tristal Tales podcast. Today we're going to talk about the head of Wagner being killed alongside with other members in Russia. So, Chris, what do you want to tell us about the head of Wagner and
Well, I think
what's
the
happened?
actual crash itself is more the kind of response and people's like rush to judgment is interesting in this. Shows a lot of it shows a lot more about the people who are making the judgments than what actually happened, because nobody actually has real details in it. But what we can see is that from the video evidence of what is said to be the plane crashing. I mean, uh, and what the Russian government says, it was a plane, it was a private jet that was taken off from Moscow going to St. Petersburg, and then it just fell straight out of the sky. And the video that was recorded by just a civilian on the ground, you can see it if you stop the frame. I posted it on our Telegram channel in the comments. You can see that the plane is missing an entire wing. So, and it's consistent with it falling straight out of the sky that it was missing a wing. Because normally, if a plane has engine trouble or has some mechanical fault, it'll continue its glide path. It'll just be, maybe without engines, so the glide path will be greatly reduced and it'll go more steeply down. But this just turned and dropped like a rock. So it says the wing was detached in flight somehow. So that could be done with an explosive on board, or it could be done with like a missile, like a small surface-to-air Stinger missile. The U.S. aligned forces have carried out these assassinations with small Stinger missiles. I mean, for decades. I mean, the classic example is what happened in Rwanda preceding the 2000 or the 94 genocide. So, they've had all sorts of nefarious plane crash incidents to take people out. It's a very effective way of assassinating people too, because there's really no evidence. So for me, that's a very likely answer, is that it was some kind of sabotage in a U.S. or a imperialist aligned forces, because Prigozhin was now leading a force that was going to be like a spearhead in defending Niger from this oncoming French war that they're planning. According to Algeria, the war plans are still happening, and Algeria has blocked France's flyover authority, so they don't have France asked, "Oh, can we please fly over your country?" And Algeria was like, "Hell no." So that's still in the works. And they say, "Oh, it's ECOWAS. It's some indigenous African group going in there to defend Niger's democracy." That's what the Western narrative is. But ECOWAS is an imperialist aligned coalition of countries, and every single member has extremely low. The government has extremely low confidence. The public has extremely low confidence in the government. Each member, like Senegal, has been having protests for like 3 years. Nigeria almost never has good. I mean, everyone in Nigeria for decades has hated their government. They know they're corrupt. It's just like a bastion of corruption. I mean, the leader of it worked for like heroin mafia in Chicago before he went back. There's a great Gray Zone article about that. So it's just, these are all just criminal governments that are sort of oppressing their population, that the West has coalesced into some kind of like quasi-official organization, this ECOWAS group. But it's not, the people don't like that, and they don't like their government. So to get those soldiers to go along with a war in which they're fighting Niger, who has like president who has like an 80% popularity now, even though he came about in a coup, the people know that he's doing what's right for their country, which is sort of the classic definition of democracy. The fighters of ECOWAS would look at that president and be jealous and wish their president was like that. So I don't think that you're going to get very good fighting force from that. And so because they've hired now Wagner, Wagner proved itself to be extremely good fighting force in Ukraine, that was a major threat to this French operation. So that's coming. So the best thing to do would be to decapitate the leadership of that mercenary army just before you're going to launch an invasion into Niger. So I wouldn't be surprised if that invasion happens sometime soon. And if anyone doesn't understand what that is, I can give you a rundown. Like, Niger had a president who was more loyal to France than he was his own people, and was allowing France to like steal natural resources basically from Niger. And then the army got fed up with that, and they took over, and they have this very well-spoken coup president now who's taken over, and he's very popular among the people. I think it was the Financial Times or something that did a survey there, and it showed that he's like 80% popular. So it's the truth. And because they would not want to report that if it wasn't, because they're imperialist aligned. And then all the neighboring countries, or a lot of the neighboring countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and what's the other one? Mali, Burkina Faso, and one other one. The neighbor states have all had coups recently that are anti-imperialist throughout and they've all said, okay, we're in an alliance now to protect Niger from any kind of like U.S. or French attempt to reinstall the government. So that's what's happening. And this Prigozhin thing is intimately connected with that, in my opinion. So like people like Jackson Hinkle's been all over Twitter saying that Putin killed Prigozhin. That's insane, because that just makes Putin look like a weak person, and he plays into the narrative of the West saying Putin's some kind of crazy mafia dictator and it does not play well to his own public to do that. So like that would be just a ridiculously sloppy thing for him to do. Now it could be that some of the military bosses in Russia did it. That's without Putin's authority, because when Wagner did this goofy little rebellion a few months ago, that he did kill a few pilots because they shot down a couple helicopters, Russian helicopters. So the Russian Air Force and they may have a grudge against him, and they may have decided to take him out. But again, that just seems not as likely benefit. I mean, humans are hard to predict, so it could be just some hothead who did it. But this is very, very beneficial to France and America. And the CIA had warned Prigozhin like months back, like, don't walk in front of big windows, be careful of what you eat. And they were saying that they wanted to assassinate him. So, and then also that you found this tweet that the like embassy.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw that the official accounts of U.S. Embassy in Minsk issued a warning and asked U.S. citizens to evacuate. So, I mean, it can.
2 days before. Yeah.
Exactly 2 days before. Yeah. So this cannot be coincidental. And
detractors would say that in April, the same embassy issued the same warning. So it could be that they just do these warnings occasionally to like provide cover for when they actually do an operation. So they may have done a false warning in April just as a matter of course. Maybe every year they do one just so then they can pull one out of their pocket when it's needed and it doesn't look suspicious. That could be. But at any case, there is they did do it in April for no apparent reason. So could be an argument that is unrelated. But I think the main argument, there's no way to prove anything, but the Kibono method of deducing who's at fault is usually the best, because in this case, there's a huge benefit to America, a huge benefit. There would be like a small benefit to like vengeance of some Russian Air Force guy, maybe trying to avenge his friend's death, and maybe, but not as great in terms of geopolitical benefit And maybe that guy, the U.S. worked with that guy to do it. Who knows? But there could
Yeah.
be some conspiracy there. But it's definitely not Putin and the Russian government doing it, because it's like that is just insane. And it's not Prigozhin faking his own death. He wouldn't take out 10 of his own leadership to fake his own death. That is insane. So, no.
I think people, yeah, I think people like people who argue that, I mean, we have different types of arguments coming from those who say it was Putin killing him. For example, Jackson Hinkle is like very pro Putin, and he's saying that this came because Putin said he would never forgive betrayal, which I think doesn't really make sense, and that would be very um, that's not smart, and that's not what Putin usually would do. Just taking revenge, but it also happened at a time when BRICS was happening, and it just went down on the headlines. Like everybody was talking about this accident or whatever or assassination attempt, and who was to blame. And you wouldn't see a lot of news outlets covering BRICS
But
anymore.
that's
So it's
perspective.
and but
Nobody has to talk about BRICS, and it's still happening, and it's still as significant as if people talk about it.
exactly.
Because, like, I mean, actually, it may be even better if people don't talk about BRICS, because then it can happen in the background while people don't know about it, because it really is a massive power grab. So I think I think it is true. It stole a lot of the media coverage, but I'm not sure that really impacts the imperialist agenda at all. That maybe that there isn't as much coverage of BRICS, because I mean they have 20 applicants. They already accepted. We're going to talk about the ones they accepted. So it's like they're well on their way to achieving their goals, and they don't need the media blabbering about them. So I don't know.
Yeah, but
That is part of
it
it.
would
But
be
go ahead.
it would make a very big difference if the people were knew that this is happening and that this is possible, and you would see probably more nations would push for their governments to stop like bowing down to the US and everything. I'm not talking about this moment or that it is coinciding with the this I mean whatever happened in Russia, but I'm saying like I mean the news coverage is I think it's very important.
Yeah. Well, it'll probably happen over the course of the rest of the week in terms of interviews and things. And the Western news was never covering BRICS anyway, so we don't have any. But so
That's true.
basically, we're just interrupting the news in the global South, and I think everyone in the global South is already pretty aware of BRICS. So I mean, I hope it didn't
Yeah.
influence them. I don't think that would be one of the like calculations in Langley if they're pulling off that operation, that it would interrupt the news cycle. I think it
No,
might
it
be a
wasn't.
way of
It's
intimidating. See, I think the other benefit that people might not understand is like them blowing up an air or taking out an airplane over in Russian territory, killing a guy that they want to kill, threatens all Russian leadership. And then if they do it during BRICS, then everyone at BRICS can talk about it and realize that the US is like a threat to them however they want. So it's like really a mafia tactic where they're not saying they did it, they're not taking credit, but everyone knows they did it, and it's like a mafia. And that's why when you see people like Jackson Hinkle, who ostensibly claim to be Putin advocates or whatever, when they are accusing Putin of murder, even if it's murder that he supposedly wanted to do and is good, is the opposite of being an ally of Putin. Because if Putin wanted to do it, you he should do it in secret, and it shouldn't be bragged. I mean, it's like you're implicating him in a murder. It's just not what you do if you're trying to promote someone at all. Like it's not cool to be a mafia boss. It's not cool. I mean, the whole thing is it's not cool to just kill people like that. But
yeah.
for the West, it's standard operating procedure. So so I think
But even
let's go ahead.
yeah. I mean, like a lot of things that we hear on the Twitter now is, I mean, all the time it has been, but more now. It's all about getting impressions because I think Hinkle also tweeted other things that suggested that it wasn't Putin's um, like operation or anything. But I think the most important thing and the best question to ask is like who is benefiting the cui bono. is
Yeah,
the
well, I
best
mean,
thing.
he obviously shows his cards when he's like complaining on Twitter that he's not getting paid enough for his impressions. So that's what he's there just to try and surf the outrage, which is like that's really like that's the complete opposite of what people like the Gray Zone or Mint Press do. Like they're the ones they're they're getting attacked for like standing up. They're not like blending into the
Mm.
conspiracy theory. No matter, it's just trying to figure out what actually happened, which is
Yeah, exactly. They don't rush into concluding who was doing it. I mean, they haven't published anything like. I mean, they're publishing the evidence, talking about evidence that could be
yeah.
against the narrative than the Western narrative, but they're not concluding anything or
I mean, even what we've
trying to.
talked about now isn't. There's no way anything could be published in either of those publications because we don't have any evidence. But I think the thing that
Mhm.
we need to talk about on the sideline of that kind of journalistic work is who benefits, so that people can like rationally understand that even though a lot of assassinations that the CIA does never are solved, it can always there's always a way to make very good assumptions that it was the CIA because there are a lot of uh, there's a lot of benefit involved. And I mean, the other thing, oh, I saw another post today where it's like saying that the Russian Ministry of Aviation or whatever was saying that because of sanctions, they weren't able to U.S. sanctions, they weren't able to get the parts for this U.S. aircraft, this private jet, and so they were trying to hint at that it was a mechanical failure due to not having enough parts for. Well,
Mm.
that just the evidence of the fact that an entire wing is missing, it blows that out of the water because like there are very, very few mechanical faults where the entire wing will just snap off. Like maybe the engine would rattle and you'd get like the engine end of the wing, you'd get the wing fracturing halfway because the engine was just so out of control because there's a defect. I mean, that's happened in a few crashes that I've seen, like where the engine just it gets so it's because it's a spinning thing. If something gets off and wacky, it could like just rip the wing in half, but you'd still have part of a wing. This one, the whole wing was severed. So there's just, I mean, that's a that's like one of the strongest connections on an airplane is where the wing meets the fuselage. And so it's like it's hard to envision any way that a lack of supplies would. I mean, that's part of the fundamental parts of the plane that's built, and it's like basically. I mean, I think once in a while they have to go in and check the joints to make sure they're not cracked or whatever. But there's nothing like a part. It's not like a rare part that you have to get. It's just something you have to maintain with normal tools and welding equipment or rivets or whatever. So like uh yeah, so that's absurd. So that I don't know where that's coming out of, but that is if you just look at the video, an entire wing is missing. So like you can see the fuselage, you see the tail, you see the tail engines, and you see the other wing, and the wing is completely gone. So yeah, I don't know, and I didn't even look at this plane to see which uh where the engines were mounted. I think they're tail mounted engines, so I don't even think there's an engine mount on the wing. So in that case, the idea of even a surface to air Stinger missile is kind of out of the picture because those usually heat sink onto the exhaust, the hot exhaust of the engine, and then they blow up the engine. So they usually blow up wherever the engine is. That's what's destroyed. And so I think this had two rear-mounted jet engines. I think, but anyway, we'll have to look at that. But that's another thing to take into consideration in your own personal analysis of this is whether there were jet engines. So if they're mounted on the wings. If there weren't wing mounted engines, then this is likely a bomb on board. So that's a little bit more difficult to get in there. But they've smuggled all sorts of crazy stuff into Russia now, and you can have like they did in the was it Sharm el Sheikh in the Sinai? There was a plane that crashed. It was done by some CIA affiliated group, and it was a basically you have a bomb that is connected to like a pressure sensor, so that when you take off, when you reach a certain altitude, the bomb goes off. So it's really stable at surface, so you can just carry it around in a bag, and then you can just stick it. You don't have to set it or anything. It's already ready to go, and you just stick it somewhere and then at some point in the flight, it gets detonated. So it could be something like that they snuck on board or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, these are all important to take into account. Analyzing this. Yep. Thanks for listening to another episode of News Buzz. Don't forget to share this video and join our Telegram channel. We'll put all the links in the description, and support us by sharing this video as much as you can.